Hey, good morning, friends. This is Josh here. Welcome to our morning meditations. I hope you have a wonderful night's rest and you woke up optimistic and looking forward to a beautiful brand new day, a new gift from God. I'm glad you're tuning in this morning as we're finishing up our study on the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes, for those of you who are following along, are this mini sermon within the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus has pulled in his closest disciples and he's teaching them who are the blessed ones, the blessed, the Beatitudes. So blessed are those who is kind of the format of this micro teaching inside the Sermon on the Mount. And everything that Jesus did was designed to inspire transformation. But this is really a condensed, very powerful, short bit that is really designed to catapult that transformation process forward. Jesus is literally telling us, this is the recipe right here. I'm telling you guys how to have that inner transformation. And so this last beatitude is blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, the only other beatitude that ends with for theirs is the kingdom of heaven is the first one. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And remember, being poor in spirit is an inner receptivity to getting closer to God, desiring more of God, being wanting of God. And so when we want God, when we want that inner transformation, it happens. Get closer to God and God will get closer to you, right? And so when we want that transformation, it happens because we're seeking it, we're asking God for it, and then we're receiving it. We're blessed. And so when that happens, when that transformation happens, you become new. And you become new and new and new and new and new all along your journey. From the moment that you decide to follow Christ, you're continually being made new, not just one time, but again and again and again and again. And as that happens, you begin to see things differently. We begin to see the world through the eyes of God, if I can phrase it that way. When we look at the world, where we may not have seen injustice before, maybe some of the things in the world that are problematic were invisible to us. Maybe we were preoccupied or we didn't care, but now all of a sudden we're bothered a little bit more by the fact that children are going hungry and dying in the world. And maybe it keeps us up at night that there are men, women, and children who are dying all over the world because they don't have simple antibiotics. That's a problem. Maybe we are emotionally distraught because we recognize that we have so much where we live, that our refrigerators are full and our homes are large and they're heated and they're air conditioned. And yet there are so many people who are living in poverty who don't even eat every day. We see what righteousness is, and we see the big disconnect that exists. And that breaks our hearts. And for some of us, it compels us to not just observe it, but to actually advocate for it, to do something about it. And when you choose to do something about a problem, to be a problem solver, especially when you're challenging systems of the world, you can acquire a target on your back, and you can become persecuted. You can become judged, and Christ is saying, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, because of doing the right thing, because of looking at the world with love and compassion and wanting to do something about the injustice. Even if you are persecuted, the kingdom of heaven is yours. Even more so, in a sense, because you are that much closer to God. Now, I also want to point out that if you change the tense of this beatitude, blessed are those who have been persecuted because of righteousness. it changes the meaning slightly and it takes it a little bit deeper. People who have been persecuted, we could look at this and think that he's talking about martyrdom, talking about people who've gone and been crucified or been killed because of following Jesus and not giving up their belief even unto death. And that's certainly admirable, but that's not really what Christ is saying. He's not advocating for martyrdom. He's not saying that in order to be closer to me, you should live your life in a way that you would die for your belief as a requirement to get into heaven or something like that. That's not what he's saying. Blessed are those who have been persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, is talking about freedom. Freedom. Now, I don't know about you, but when you think about persecution, there's so many different kinds of persecution. There's physical persecution, abuse. There's mental persecution, mental abuse. There's verbal persecution, verbal abuse. There's spiritual persecution, where we're persecuted because of what we believe. And whether we know it or not, we've all been through some sort of abuse in our lives. Physical, mental, spiritual, intellectual, verbal. We've all been subject to that at some point, and to different degrees and things like that. And we may have even persecuted other people. We may have even judged other people. We may have done all of those things, spoken harshly to somebody, physically abused somebody, emotionally just tore people down. I mean, we don't know. I don't know. You know, watching what you've been through, and you know what you've done. And Christ is simply saying that whether you have been persecuted or you have persecuted somebody else, the way that you rise above it and go beyond it is to recognize simply what has happened to you and what you have done, and know that I love you anyway, that I forgive you, and that I'm with you, and that you can be not of this world. John 15 says, if you were of this world, the world would love you. But I have called you out of this world. You're not of this world anymore. And so when we embark in the journey to follow Jesus, and we want, with the innermost longing of our being, to be closer to God, to experience that transformation, we become something new over and over and over again. And we go through this world and we see things as they are, and they become unsettling. And then it drives us to action. And again, we're becoming more and more like Christ. So I want you to think about that today. I want you to think about how you are blessed. How you are blessed. I want you to think about maybe times in your life how that you may have been persecuted or judged harshly, judged for things that you had no control over, and maybe how you have unjustly judged somebody else. And make peace with that. It's not something that you should let tear you down. If you feel shame because you've been persecuted, or because you've been persecuted because you've persecuted somebody else, don't let it dictate your future. Okay? Acknowledge it, recognize it, sit with the feeling inside of you. If you feel bad about it, if you feel guilt, if you feel shame, give it to God. Give it to God. Because it's a gift that you even are able to acknowledge it. And God will help you go beyond it. Call you out of this world. Give you the kingdom of heaven. I love you guys. I hope you have a beautiful day today. I've been getting some requests to keep going with this. Evidently, you guys are finding it fruitful and helpful, and I certainly love doing it. So I think we're going to move from this straight into the parables of Jesus. A lot of his parables were kind of difficult to understand and a little tricky. So I think we're going to unpack those one at a time. But I will let you go. Have a wonderful day. I love you so much. I'm so happy that you exist in the world, and I'll see you right here tomorrow.